Hey friends, welcome back to the Dwelling Place podcast. We are so glad that you are joining us today, and we hope you're encouraged and inspired as you listen to this week's message.
Acts chapter 1, verse 21 through to 26, it reads this. So now we must choose a replacement for Judas from among the men who were with us the entire time they were traveling with the Lord Jesus, from the time that he was baptized by John until the day he was taken from us. Whoever is chosen will join us as a witness of Jesus' resurrection. So they nominated two men, Joseph, called Barsabbas, also known as Justus, and Matthias. And then they all prayed, "O Lord, you know every heart. Show us which of these men you have chosen as an apostle to replace Judas in this ministry, for he has deserted us and gone to where he belongs." Then they cast lots, and Matthias was selected to become the apostle with the other 11. We're starting a new series over these next few weeks. We don't even have a name for it, really. We're just calling it the series of Un. And the idea is there's so many people and stories through the Bible which are either unknown, they are unrecognized. In this situation, they are unselected. And we want to begin to just draw from some of these stories. It's the people that don't have a name, they're unknown. And we want to begin to grapple just with some different ideas that these stories and these narratives begin to open up to us. And so here we are, we have this gentleman named Joseph Barsabbas. Very little is known about this gentleman. This is what his name means. It means son of an oath, son of conversion, son of quiet. And he's been with the apostles since the beginning of the ministry. He's been there since the time Jesus was baptized. They say he was one of the 70. There's stories that he drank poison and was not harmed. And he's there through the entire place. So good are his credentials that he gets to this point where him and one other are selected to replace Judas. And so with his resume full, with his apprenticeship done, he is there selected along with Matthias, only to experience an unselection. He was appointed only to experience disappointment. I think the only other character that I could come up with that may have experienced this type of thing was Woody from Toy Story. Appointed and chosen, only to be neglected and let go. Disappointment is to unfix or unsettle. It is to be defeated of expectation, hope, or desire. Proverbs 13 verse 12 says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." Disappointment. One of my disappointments regularly is there's a place where I may occasionally go for a triple cheeseburger, and I look forward to a freshly made triple cheeseburger, so you order it with no pickles because you want it fresh. So it's just like, you got to make it. My disappointment is when it turns up and they've usually got a dried out double cheeseburger and just placed an extra fresh patty on top. It's very disappointing. Happens on an occasional basis. Disappointment. Being defeated by expectation, hope, or desire. Disappointment defeats expectation. How would we respond if we were Joseph Barsabbas? these early stages of the church, this revolution that was occurring, he's in the heart of it with this opportunity to replace somebody who had made some bad decisions. And the other person is selected. Does he get disillusioned? Does he get hurt? Does he begin to attempt to cut the legs out of the guy that got the job? Does he get bitter? Begin to wander off? How would we respond? When experience doesn't meet expectation, people get disappointed. And when we are disappointed, our expectation is defeated. Martin Luther King Jr. says this: we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. There's a story in Exodus 16 where the Israelites have left Egypt and they've been out in the desert for approximately a month. And there was this expectation that they were being released and that they were going to go to this promised land, but they find themselves in the wilderness. They're disappointed. There's an unmet expectation. And so they begin to look back at Egypt. They begin to look back upon the place of their slavery, and they begin to romanticize about how good it was because their expectation has not been met. Their disappointment didn't just destroy expectation, it birthed delusion. I wonder how many of us go through things in life where the expectation isn't met and all of a sudden we begin to get disappointed. You know, a number of years ago, there was a contract on a house and we were happy with it. And it was nearly at the time of settlement. And all of a sudden, it falls through. There was an expectation that wasn't met. And so we get disappointed. The funny thing about disappointment is that we never thought that maybe God had a better offer in the background. We always diminish our expectation. We don't amplify it. We don't magnify it. The amount of stories I've had to walk people through over the years with not being able to have children or going through the tragedy of miscarriage. And there's this expectation. But then through disappointment, it gets defeated and they feel and believe like they can never achieve what they were once hoping for. Broken relationships. The disappointment destroys the expectation that maybe one day this can be where I thought it was going to be. Maybe one day this could be better than what I've experienced. Disappointment defeats expectation. Disappointment creates distraction. There's this story in 1 Samuel chapter 8 where the Israelites have requested from Samuel, who was the judge, they've requested from Samuel that he bring a king in to rule them. And so I'd only ever heard the story about this where God gets, he allows the people to have a king, but he lets Samuel know, hey, Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. Because God was their king, and the structure and the framework that he had set up was that he would work through a judge, and that judge would help lead the people. But what's interesting is when you actually read the story, Samuel is the judge over Israel. He's getting old, and what he does is he appoints his 2 sons as judges. And the Bible says about his sons that they are greedy and they are corrupt. And so the Israelites go back to Samuel in the disappointment of the leadership that had been appointed. What happened was they got distracted by their disappointment and they made a decision which was far beyond what they needed to make. I wonder if in their disappointment, I wonder if they could have gone to Samuel and gone, Samuel, the judges that you have appointed over us, they are not of godly character. They're corrupt. They're greedy. How do we work through this? What can this look like? Can somebody else be appointed judge? Look, I'm no scholar, but I wonder if that could have been the option where the Israelites get distracted by their disappointment and they just try to tear down the entire system rather than just dealing with their disappointment. It's a distraction, and so they want a king so they can be like everyone else. And that's where God says, hey, Samuel, let them have what they want. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. In their disappointment, they were attempting to tear down the whole system rather than just addressing the issue that was at hand. I remember a number of years ago, we were making some decisions about our future, and I'd left one job, and I was in the process of leaving a ministry role, and I'd had a conversation with a gentleman from a large, it's a large organisation, and he had come to me and he had said, Doug, we need someone of your skill set. There's a opening for a role that's coming up. You're the perfect type of person. You're the experience, where you're positioned, how you're currently transitioning in a couple of roles. We think that this would be ideal, and it's far above the type of person that we thought we might have been able to attract to this role. And so I'm just like, man, this is a God thing, because I'd already left one job and I was in the process of walking away from this other one. And now this had come up. So I'm like, this is the timing of heaven. And so we were going through the process. I resigned from my ministry role. And a few days later, I get a call from the guy that I'd been speaking to. And he says to me, hey, I don't know what to say. He goes, I feel terrible because you haven't even made it through to the interview stages. I'm like, what? I've just made some significant life decisions based on the fact that I'm probably going to be able to walk into this role over the next few weeks. And you're saying I haven't got through to the interview stages? And he goes, Doug, he goes, literally over the past week or so, we've received applications of candidates that are so far beyond what I've ever seen in this organisation. We can't refuse them the opportunity. And he goes, there's so many of them that you haven't even got through to the interview stages. And by the grace of God, I just sort of thought, you know what, that's a shame. But the fact that I haven't got through to the interview stages is probably something more out of my control than getting through to the final stage and losing a box of chocolates. The disappointment that lay there waiting for me was an opportunity to be distracted. There was an opportunity for me to get upset, for me not to pursue ministry or pursue the things that I felt like God had called me towards, out of the distraction of what was happening through that disappointment. Now, fortunately, that didn't happen, and I felt like God graced me and maybe kept my heart healthy through that time, and it allowed me to get to where I'm currently today. Hebrews 12 verse 2 says this, keep our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Do not be distracted by your disappointments. The third thought is this, that disappointment molds destiny. God can use our disappointments to mold our destiny in ways we cannot immediately understand. C.S. Lewis says you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you're at and change the ending. Disappointment molds our destiny. Joseph, the dreamer, he has a dream. You know, we all have those dreams and then we expect to walk into those dreams the next week. He's thrown in a pit by his brothers. He's human trafficked by his brothers. He goes into a place that he doesn't know. He's falsely accused of rape. He's jailed. Disappointment. Joseph the dreamer. And in Genesis 50 verse 20, Joseph acknowledges that God was with him all through his trials. He says this, he's speaking to his brothers by this point. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. Joseph's disappointments were steps in a process of God's greater plan for his life. So we get to Joseph Barsabas, where we started this whole journey. The disappointed nearly apostle. This gentleman that we don't know a whole heap about. He was jailed or imprisoned by Emperor Nero, one of the most violent and hostile emperors towards Christians in the Roman Empire. And he was later released from that imprisonment. And it's said that he went to this town. I'm going to say this once, and then I'm going to come up with a new name, all right? Eleutheropolis. I'm not going to go again. This is what it means, and this is the name that we're sticking with. It means city of the free. A Palestinian Arab village northwest of Hebron, a thriving Roman colony and the administrative center of the district. This is where Joseph Barsabas goes. The city was flourishing as public buildings, military station, aqueducts, a large amphitheater. It was a very important place in the Roman Empire, and it was called the City of the Free. This is where Joseph Barsabas, also known as Justus, became Bishop Justus of the City of the Free. This being unselected, this disappointment led Justus to the City of the Free. He had the opportunity to really go to a city of bondage, a city of imprisonment, a city of being held captive to hurt and pain and frustration and disappointment. But this gentleman who walks with Jesus all through his ministry and has this opportunity to be of this group of people that were going to help move the early church forward. And he is unselected. He is disappointed. And rather than going to a city of bondage within his heart, rather than going to a city of captivity within his heart, he somehow finds his way to the City of the Free, and he is the bishop of that city. Maybe this morning we need to allow our hearts to access a city of freedom. How do you and how do I handle disappointment? How can we release our heart to be a part of the city of the free? Proverbs 3 verse 5 says this, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Disappointment defeats expectation. Disappointment creates distraction, and disappointment will mold our destiny. How do we handle disappointment? Here's some questions that maybe we need to ask ourselves in response to disappointment. Number one is this: where is my heart trusting? Psalm 62 verse 8 reads, my people trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart to him, for God is our refuge. Luke 6 verse 45 says, a good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. It's in your heart this morning. If you're comfortable, maybe just close your eyes. I just want you to begin to consider, God, am I harboring disappointment? Am I holding on to not being selected? Am I carrying hurt from what people said? Am I carrying pain and feeling locked up because of the expectation that I had placed on others, on my parents, on my kids, on my peer group, on leaders, on my workplace, on the church? We need to ask ourselves questions like this. Who is doing the appointing? John 15 verse 16 says, "You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name." Are we appointing ourselves? Are we placing ourselves in positions that maybe God hasn't appointed us to? Jeremiah 1:5, "I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and I appointed you as my prophet to the nation." Who is doing the appointing? 1 Timothy 2:9, "You are a chosen people. You are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's very own possession." Where is my heart trusting? Who is doing the appointing? And the third and final question would be this: where am I placing my hope? I wonder if at that time when Matthias and Justus are standing with each other and maybe they're getting ready to cast lots separately, maybe they're getting ready to throw or cast lots at the same time. And so I wonder, as those two men stood or sat there, if their hope was in the person that was casting the lots. I wonder if their hope was in the lots themselves. Where am I placing my hope? 1 Peter 2 verse 6 says, "I'm placing a cornerstone in Jerusalem, chosen for great honor, and anyone who trusts in him will never be disappointed." Psalm 22:5, "To you they cried out, and they fled to safety. In you they trusted, and they were not disappointed." Psalm 23:4, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me." And Romans 8 verse 28, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose."
Thanks for spending time with us today. To hang out again the next time an episode drops, make sure you subscribe. See ya!